Funny story, my camera overheated and died on me just before I was about to tell the really intense experience I had. I swear EP screws with all of my technology when I bring him up. Enjoy. Okie pokey weirdos, I'm Rev, and have any of you been to Graceland? It was a massive bucket list trip for me, and I've actually been to the Graceland museums and property twice now. I'm here! I made it! I gotta go to the visitor center and get my VIP ticket, and then I can go on the tour. Alrighty, take two. I'm gonna try to get in again within the same week. Because my tour guide forgot me during my first tour, so I got a free second tour. And along with the story of my tour guide completely forgetting me, this property, not just the Graceland house, but the property itself as well as Memphis itself, is extremely haunted. Let's go, I want to see some ghosties. And something hits me like a truck. I started feeling like I was having trouble breathing. I felt like I was suffocating. That piano still going bananas, and the keys were moving. And we're both like, oh, do you see that? Can you see that? And my internal sixth sense hearing was very strong. One of the most intense ghostly experiences I've ever had. For now, with it being close to spooky season, I thought it would be appropriate to share my ghost stories from Memphis, Tennessee. Very specifically, Elvis's house and property, Graceland. My very first time seeing the property, I didn't know I was going to get to see it before I actually went to visit the property. When we entered the house, two ladies in my tour group just started sobbing. That's not where I was at. They were falling apart and could not hold themselves together with how overwhelmed they were about being able to be in Elvis's house. I was way more in tune with needing to see energies, entities, something. I was so tuned into my intuitive ghostliness because I'd finally flipped that switch and was like, let's go, I want to see some ghosties. At first, the house was just full of a lot of energy. It was thick, it was heavy. So many people constantly go in and out of that building that I was getting everyone else's energies who have been more recent. And I had to start turning that dial and tuning into the right energies to be seeing what I was hoping to see. And there are plenty of mirrors all over the house. So you see every little bit of movement, and it's repeated in the mirrors. And in my pictures, you see plenty of glares and orbs just because of the mirrors, so it's a lot harder to tell in pictures if you caught anything. So I was very heavily more so relying on myself, knowing that I had my energy turned up. For any of you who have visited, and most definitely for the locals, please let me know down in the comments if you've had similar experiences or even just your own, because I'd love to make a compilation video on other people's experiences with this as well. Looking around this house, I kept feeling like something was off, but it was more like they didn't put the furniture in quite the right place. I kept wanting to move tables over a couple of inches, push chairs back in, or change out flowers from the vases, thinking he wouldn't want these kind of flowers here. But how was I supposed to know that? I was just getting a sense that everything wasn't quite sitting in the right places. We looked at the living room. I absolutely am in love with the peacock stained glass. I want some for my own house eventually. You could see the white piano and room past the living room. Very pretty. Then we went to the small back bedroom, could see the pink, I think it's poodle wallpaper. With the closet in that little back bedroom, I definitely wanted to touch the clothing to see if I would get visions from it and see any memories, but those clothes are behind glass. I wasn't getting anything from that room. It was like the energy was dead over there. Living room, massively energetic, but a whole bunch of people have been in, near, around that area, so I was picking up on mostly other people's energy. And something about me, I call myself an intuitive. A lot of people I think would reference me as a medium or a psychic, but I don't feel those connect to what I do as well as responding to it as an intuitive. But oftentimes these visions, thoughts, ideas, pictures just come up in my head for me. Even feelings or sensations. And during that drive from the airport to my Airbnb, I started recognizing street signs. I'd never been in Memphis, Tennessee before. I've driven through Nashville, Tennessee before, but never Memphis. At least not in this body. But I'm starting to recognize street names. And I got the feeling that we were getting close to something that I would recognize. Suddenly, I sat straight up and went, "Oh, home!" My Uber driver chuckled and said, "What you say, hun?" Very sweet old man, loved him. Had him a couple of times as my Uber driver in Memphis. He was great. And in that moment, I realized that I had said that out loud. So I corrected myself for him and said, "I think we're close to his home." And the guy laughed again and said, "Oh, you're an Elvis fan." And he told me, "Oh yeah, we are pretty close to his house. It'll be up on the right here soon." We get onto a road that is absolutely covered in construction. You could hardly see EP's house because there was so much construction and noise going on. It was a sensory overload nightmare. But I did try to get a picture of the fence as we passed. And as I turned back in my seat to continue looking at it as we drove past, I saw something that should not have been happening in the middle of all that construction. I saw a farmer that was about knee-deep in the asphalt, pushing a plow with an ox who was also about that deep in the asphalt, and they were plowing the street, just straight across the street. Nobody else noticed them, and I was like, great, the ghosties are already starting up. Just saw a farmer going, "Yep, time to plow the asphalt." Memphis was so freaking busy with the ghosty energy. The next morning, I get up to go to Graceland. So freaking excited. Came up with an outfit that was very Elvis inspired. Outfit check. EP necklace, EP earrings, black lace, pink and black and pink and black. And the lovely woman who ran my Airbnb actually drove me around town quite a bit. She was willing to give me rides because she was retired, had nothing else to do, and loved seeing how excited I was about this new place that I was at and knowing that this was a bucket list thing for me. So this lovely lady dropped me off in that massive parking lot and tried to give me instructions on how to find the ticket building. But they'd blocked off a lot of the area so that you can't drive through. You have to cross over a bridge and then walk through a number of buildings where all of the museum stuff is set up. My camera is shaking for most of any of the videos I took for this because I was so ecstatic. I was vibrating. Got my ticket, met my tour guide. He was a very quiet old man. None of us in the tour group could really hear him, even with him having the microphone and us having our headphones, which became more of a problem while on the tour. Ultimate VIP tour. Somebody stop me. But I had gotten a VIP tour. I paid a lot of money for that thing. I thought go big or go home because bucket list. We rode in one of the nicer buses, which I would figure out later was the nicer bus. And we were one of the first groups on the property. There were only 3 other VIP groups that early in the morning because I got the very first tour for the morning. Because I wanted to make sure there were as few people as possible so that my ghosty sights and senses would be able to activate a lot more easily with fewer things going on. I wanted to be able to get a decent read on this house and the property in general. There was one tour group that went ahead of us first, and they made their way through the living room space and dining room, while my tour guide talked about how they wanted to invite us into Elvis's house as if he would have, because he was always inviting new friends over. I thought it was a pretty interesting intro and talking about Southern hospitality and all that. I did grow up in the South and I understand that concept and lived it for a number of years, so it was nice to come back to that after so many years of not being around that kind of Southern hospitality anymore. Then we came to the staircase, and my tour guide pointed out the photo of Elvis from when he was, I believe, a very young teenager when his hair was still blonde, and he's like, you could notice that there's something wrong with this photo. And one of my very strong connections to Elvis is involved with one of my spirit guides. My spirit guide, who is more connected to Elvis than I am, rolled his eyes massively when the tour guide's like, there's something wrong with this photo. Because he and I are like, oh good God. And this was consistent throughout the whole tour. My tour guide kept bringing things up as if nobody in the world knows these things except for the Memphis tour guides. And yet, so many of these things are easily Googled. What is that? Oh, I'm being sequenced. Or this information is in plenty of documentaries. Yes, Elvis was naturally blonde. There was a fashion statement going around called being a greaser that developed right around when he started getting into that fashion and helped cement it and create it, really, technically. Although a couple of people in my tour group seemed really surprised to know that he was originally blonde. But while standing near the staircase and ignoring my tour guide while he's going on and on and on about how Elvis was originally blonde, I'm getting a lot of past energy from this staircase. It's something old, and before Elvis ever got the house. The energy I started getting was this old woman. She was probably in her mid-60s, and then I see her come down those stairs, walk through my tour guide, turn the corner, and go into the living room. She's wearing a pigeon-breasted black dress, very high white collar, black brooch at her neck. Her hair is gray and piled up in a little updo, little bun on the top, and her whole outfit is black otherwise. She was a widow. And it was as if there was a spotlight on her, and everything within the spotlight looked like it was supposed to look like when she was living at that house. Everything was raw woods, and there were a whole bunch of candles all over the house. And I watched her walk through the living room and light her candles, walk past us, light candles in the dining room. Yes, I'm more than a little crazy, I know. Y'all are not the one living in this head. She seemed very sad. It felt like her husband had died quite recently for her, and the reason she was lighting so many candles was because it was in his memory. Then the read I was getting changed. I started feeling like I was having trouble breathing. But it wasn't very specifically my own trouble breathing. Someone was showing me something. I was seeing a red carpet. I was laying on it, struggling to breathe. I had just vomited on that carpet. And I was like crawling across the carpet trying to get to something, trying to call out to somebody, but everything was so painful. It was so hard to breathe. It was hard to make a noise at all. And then I was snapped out of it by my tour guide calling us into the dining room. I wish I could have stayed there to get a full read on that, because now I know that EP was showing me his death. I wish I had gotten a full read on that. But I did not understand that vision at the time, and I brushed it off to continue with my tour guide. In the dining room, I could hear people talking as if they were having a meal. This was most definitely residual energy. I kept seeing little visions of various foods being on the table. Plenty of mashed potatoes, burgers, hot dogs, stuff that you'd put on the grill. Very hometown Southern cooking. Made me absolutely starving, and I could smell it too. It was intense. I completely missed out on everything my tour guide was saying in that room because he was talking so quiet, could hardly hear him, had the volume turned all the way up on my headphones. Barely could hear him. But also, the energy was so strong in there that, and my internal sixth sense hearing was very strong. I did eventually get an image of the family sitting at the table. Elvis at the head of the table like he usually was. And I was standing in front of the TV. That's where my tour guide kind of placed us. But I was the one who was standing directly in front of it. And EP at the head of the table went, "Hey, darling, can you move over? I can't see my show." I aloud said, "Oh, sorry." Scooched over. And he went, "Yep, thank you, that's good." And everybody close enough to me, there were about 3 people in my group who all looked at me and were like, "Who did you say sorry to? Why'd you move over?" I said, "Oh, I thought I was in somebody's way. I was wrong." And there was this really sweet couple in my tour group. They were in their late 50s, I believe, and they hung out with me the most, chatted with me the most, and in this moment, I think they realized that I could see things and hear things other people weren't. Because they both looked at me funny, thought about it for a second, and then went back to what the tour guide was saying. While everybody else was starting to move into the kitchen, I was still in the dining room, and I suddenly heard a very loud noise. Someone was banging on that gorgeous white piano in the other room. So I froze, quickly turned, and was about to give somebody an earful for touching that piano. No one was there, and I could still hear it. Instead of following my tour group, I tiptoed my way back into the entry as close to the living room as I could, that piano still going bananas, and the keys were moving. And the next tour group came in as I'm standing there watching the keys on the piano move. 2 of the girls from that tour group came up beside me and were both like, "Oh, do you see that? Can you see that?" And all of us were so upset we could not take video in that house. We were not allowed to take video footage in any of the Elvis locations, museums, buildings, anything. Mostly, I'm sure, because they were playing copyright music for a lot of it, so you don't want to get copyright issues with recording video. But the 3 of us are standing there, watching this the piano keys go tick, 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 tick. And then I hear, not with these ears, but in here, "Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O." And even though for the women that were standing around with me watching the piano do that, they walked away because for them, the keys had stopped, the piano had stopped making noise. But for me, the music continues, and there was actually more appropriate playing of Old MacDonald on this piano. And I get a vision of EP in a white tracksuit playing on the piano. "And on this farm he had a piggy, piggy, pig. E-I-E-I-O." He is singing so terribly and obnoxiously and playing on the piano in the same manner. And then there's a footstool kind of near the piano for one of the chairs close to the TV. And sitting on that footstool, I see a little girl with long blonde hair. And she's clapping her hands and giggling and kicking her feet. "And on this farm he had a cow. Moo. E-I-E-I-E-O. In that moment, I realized that what I was seeing was something I call a projection. This was their, I guess you would call it, afterlife experience, because I went to Graceland very soon after Lisa Marie died. And with Lisa Marie's passing, the energy in that house went way up. Pretty much immediately after she passed. I've watched interviews and videos from tour guides and other employees who've worked on this property talking about how things got really riled up when she passed. And I was seeing part of that. Okay, camera died on me. Let's try this again. I was getting that residual energy plus them being able to reunite in the afterlife. Who's so freaking sweet and cute. I love it! This was an awesome vision to get in that moment. Because he was playing with Lisa Marie again, and they were happy, and it was so sweet and so cute. And the dress that she was wearing in that moment was her adorable little mushroom dress. She was at that age again. She hadn't gotten to the point where she was dealing with addiction and horrible relationships, and she was back to being happy. And so was EP. By that point, I realized that my tour group was about to leave the kitchen, so I quickly scurried back over to them and kept up with them just as the tour guide was finishing up explaining that there was an extra staircase down to the kitchen so that EP could come through there from his bedroom and not have to come down the main staircase towards the living room. I wasn't getting a whole lot of energy from the kitchen itself. That staircase, there was some energy, but it just felt like sadness, like depression, but not something super heavy. Just something that you know you deal with every day and it's there, but you try to ignore it. Random vase picture. And before leaving the kitchen, I just thought the art on this vase was really pretty. Then we walked into that space that was a recording studio for a while. They had the band set up in there. And I did get a couple visions of them practicing, but nothing major. So we kept walking through the house. And our tour guide made a really big deal of all the wall phones, and I'm going, yeah, wall phones. It was the 70s. Duh. And especially with a house that was still stuck in the 70s, I found it really interesting with how many electronics and light switches there were in there. EP was absolutely obsessed with new tech, so he got the newest stuff that was available and had his house decked out. Then you turn and go down these stairs. This staircase is absolutely covered in mirrors. Our tour guide told us to be really careful because a lot of people get terrible vertigo in that staircase, and a lot of people have fallen down those stairs. I felt really bad for this house with everybody going up and down the stairs because I could hear the stairs creaking, and I'm like, oh, they all need to be reinforced, these poor stairs. The house is crying out in pain. Hitting the bottom of the stairs, you first see the bar with little glass clowns on the counter. I love the clowns. I know a lot of people are afraid of clowns, but I absolutely love them just because they do now have that spooky level to them. But these clowns would have been put up on that bar around in the 70s, or maybe even before that, at a time when clowns were fun. There wasn't a Stephen King's It or John Wayne Gacy. So there were a lot of little clown motifs throughout the house, and they were supposed to be fun and silly. Turning to your left from the bar, you see the TV room. For some reason, this monkey gave me the creeps. I don't know what it is about the monkey, but please tell me if you also felt uncomfortable about this monkey. It was the only thing that really made me uncomfortable in that house, and I knew it wasn't an EP-related thing. Wherever EP got this monkey from, I don't want to go there. I like that they had the TV playing various TV shows and cartoons and things that Elvis would be watching. However, this was another room where I felt like all the furniture and pillows and everything was just slightly off, and I wanted to fix everything. I have watched movies where they have recreations of the rooms and some of the things are misplaced or moved around because they live there. It's not IKEA. And so many of those feel more accurate to me, but also there was just something in my own memory, in my head, that was like, this footstool should be on that side, and this table needs to be over here, and nothing's lining up quite right. And in this room you can see EP's record collection. He had an absolutely massive collection, and none of it was his own music. At least, hardly any of it. Now, I got another story from this room, but I couldn't piece the puzzles together correctly until later. Because in that room, I could hear a child crying. It sounded like a 2-year-old maybe, but I wasn't quite sure where the crying was coming from. I just knew it was the downstairs floor. And I could hear yelling, adults arguing, something was going on, something was very loud. Wasn't exactly sure what it was exactly. Until I went into the museum and they had in glass cases a whole bunch of the tech that EP was obsessed with. And one of the pieces of technology on display was a TV that he shot. I suddenly got energy coming off this TV when I saw it, so I put my hand against the glass to get a better read on it. And I got this massive, vivid vision of him shooting the TV. Lisa Marie had been in the pool table room, sitting on a chair, fiddling with toys, and because he had shot the TV and it was so loud and she was so little, she started crying. She thought she was in trouble, she was scared, and Priscilla came downstairs like, what the F is going on? Why'd you shoot the friggin' TV? Why did you make our little girl cry? You need to pull yourself together because you're upsetting our kid. And this huge argument back and forth between the parents, and the little girl is still just sobbing because the TV exploded, Dad's angry, now Mom's screaming, now they're both yelling at each other. Yeah, that'd be pretty terrifying for a little kid. I've been there. But it was really interesting to me how I could feel that energy in that room, but not get the story until I interacted with the physical item that set off the whole thing. Following that, our tour guide moved us into the pool table room. They've got that fabric covered ceiling, so they had to take the fireplace out of it so that you weren't setting the whole house on fire. And then there's the matching fabric on the walls as well. Again, let's not set the house on fire. And you have the pool table. There's a spot on the pool table where one of the guys tried to do a trick shot and it scuffed up the velvety textured fabric. The lighting in that room was terrible. Either way, with that scuffed up bit, I did see a vision of who did it. There's a lot of arguments over which one of the guys from the Memphis Mafia scuffed the table. Although what I saw was somebody who was pretty close to like a redhead scuffing up the table, and the main person that I know of who had more orangey hair compared to the rest of the group was Jerry, so I have a very strong feeling that Jerry was the one who scuffed the table. For those who don't know, Jerry was Elvis's bassist. Researching each one of the individual guys from the Memphis Mafia alone can be pretty interesting, because all of them were also integrated into music history somehow. Moving out of the pool table room, there was something like a wood paneled covered entryway before getting to the staircase that would lead to the jungle room. There's a pretty little thing waiting for the king down in the jungle room. And you know you're getting to the jungle room when you see that plush green carpet. I really wanted to get a good read on the jungle room, but there was so much going on. It was hard for me to get a sense of all of it, any of it. There are a lot of items in that room and each one tells its own story. There's also so much traffic through that house that it was messing with my read. I absolutely love the room itself, just in its themed gaudiness, because, hey look, hideous furniture, I have to buy it. There is that little bear sitting in the chair in the back corner, and I did see a little Lisa Marie sitting with the bear. But that very first day, I really didn't get much of a read on this room, especially because our tour guide just rushed us right through there instead of letting us have a good look, which was really annoying when it's one of the rooms that has the most to look at. Onto the yard. We get out to the yard and I'm seeing visions of all the guys like playing football and chasing after each other, tackling each other to the ground. And I get this vision of them playing with firecrackers, fireworks, explosives, dangerous things. And our tour guide is mumbling about something that happened in the yard, and I wasn't really picking up on it until I watch in my vision one of the guys running across the yard. A firecracker goes pew and hits the slide at the opposite end of the yard. Right as I see it in my mind, my tour guide points over to the swing set and goes, "And if you see the hole in the slide over there, that's because the guys were playing with firecrackers and misfired one of them." And I go, "Ah! I saw that before you said it." I didn't mention to anyone in my tour group that I am so intuitive and that I'm reading the house and seeing visions the whole freaking time. But the older couple definitely were starting to notice that I was watching things and seeing things move that nobody else was seeing. From the yard, you move into the office building, mostly where Vernon worked, Elvis's dad. And then EP was in that office on and off again as well to get paperwork done and deal with all the financing stuff. But of course, he had other people doing that for him most of the time. I love the TV that they had playing in the office with him talking about being in Tanks and Tanks rock and roll. One of my favorite interviews with him. But I didn't get much of a read on this room. I think part of it was because I couldn't actually be in the room. There was glass looking into it, and there was a barrier there that was keeping me from reading any of the objects or just the energy in the room in general. And my voice is starting to go. Moving on from the office, we went into the space where there was the little shooting range, as well as the replica of the very teeny tiny house that the family had when Elvis was born. I was not aware of what building was coming next. We were walking through all of the different buildings around the property, and I wasn't keeping an eye on which one each step was. I was more worried about the horses out in the field, because as we were walking past, the tour guide had us pull over to the side for other tours to make it through because he was going slower. And we all asked if the horses were friendly, and he said no, that we need to stay further away from the fence because they're not very nice to people that they don't know. However, I was one of the ones who was closest to the fence because he's going, no, the horses aren't safe. So everybody took another step forward. I stayed where I was because I was like, boo-hoo. I have always had a very good connection with animals, and every single dog at every single party that people have told me, oh no, he won't play with you because he only likes me because I'm his mommy or his daddy. I'm like, uh-huh, yeah, sure. And that dog wants to spend the rest of the party with me. Well, the horses were the same way. We're standing there near the fence waiting for other tours to go past, and I felt one of them start nibbling at the back of my head. I was still pretty far away from the fence, so the horse had reached its head out as far as it could to nibble at the fluffiness at the back of my head. And I popped forward and went, excuse me? And then all the people in my group turned around and looked, and they're like, the horses want to play with her! And they were all jealous because once they came up to the fence as close as I was, the horses ran away. Between my ghosty energy and my animal energy, beings never leave me alone. So with having the horse experience, I wasn't expecting the next building. I was also still chatting and giggling with the older couple that were hanging out with me. And we were talking about the things that we thought were cool in the house and how the yard was set up and all that. I'm not paying attention what the tour guide's saying. I'm not paying attention to what people who are entering the next building are saying. But then I step over that threshold. 1 foot. I have straddled myself between 1 foot on the step and 1 foot on the carpet. I'm standing in the middle of the doorway, and something hits me like a truck. I braced my arms against the door frame and gasped for air. I felt like I was suffocating. And the older couple were directly behind me and were both like, "Oh my God, sweetheart, are you okay?" And I started slowly moving down to sit on my knees because something was just a massive amount of pressure crushing my lungs. It felt like my very best friend, who's like 4 times my size, was giving me a massive bear hug and was not letting me go. I myself have breathing issues. I have a lot of issues with my esophagus. The reason I actually started working on my bucket list was because in 2022, I had 2 near-death experiences. And I went, okay, my body is trying to give up on me. I need to start doing the things I want to do now before it completely stops working and I can't do these things. So at first, standing in that doorway, I thought I was having esophagus issues, but it felt like my lungs. It didn't feel like straight down the middle of my esophagus. I know the feeling and difference between the two based on all the medical issues I've had over the years. My lungs were burning. They were on fire, and I don't have issues with my lungs anymore. I used to. I also used to have issues with my heart. I knew what my heart murmur felt like, and it felt like my heart murmur was back 20 times worse. My chest was in so much pain, and I was gasping for air, and I hadn't quite made it all the way to the floor to be on my knees when the wife of the couple behind me asked, "Sweetheart, do you know what building we're in?" I paused and thought about it, and then went, "The court." And she went, "Mm-hmm." And her husband went, "Oh," realizing what I had just experienced. The rest of the tour group are staring at us, a little terrified, thinking that I'm like having a heart attack or something. Which I practically was. The building that we had entered, even though we could only see brown leather furniture in that moment, just past that brown leather furniture was the racquetball court. The last activity that Elvis did before going to his bedroom before he passed. A lot of accounts for that night will say that he was having a lot of trouble breathing, but he was also feeling really anxious, and he asked a couple of friends to play racquetball with him at some ungodly hour in the morning. What I was hit with unexpectedly in that doorway was the pain he was feeling that morning. As soon as I realized what building we were in, I could finally shut it off enough to get fully back onto my feet. The wife of the couple helped guide me into the building the rest of the way and just kept an eye on me and like kept a hold of my arm locked in so that if I lost my balance again, she was holding me up. And I did get a little weak at the knees multiple times in this building. And her husband stayed directly behind me to make sure that I wasn't falling backwards. And in the racquetball court, they play music. And with the audio tour, which we'll get to later because I got to go a second time where I did the audio tour instead of with my tour guide. Even though in the audio tour, they have sounds of the racquetball court going, a game going, that game is very rhythmic in the recording. What I was hearing in that room was very off. It would try to be rhythmic for a while, but then something would stop and I could hear heavy breathing, very labored breathing. I would hear someone say, "Are you okay, man? Do we need to stop?" No, it's all right, let's keep going. Racquetball going for a bit, missing multiple times, go rhythmic for a bit, miss it again. And the wife, while we were in there and she could see on my face, she told me that I was very pale, like all the color had drained from my face when I stepped over that threshold. And that wife in the racquetball court room looked at me and went, "You are sensing all the things, aren't you?" And I went, oh yeah. By that point, my stomach had started hurting a lot. My intestines were just very unhappy with me. And I have had years of intestinal problems as well, so I totally got that that could have been my own thing. But for my heart murmur to come back suddenly, so intense out of nowhere, and then I would be perfectly fine as soon as I was out of that building. Because once we got out that door, the wife and husband checked on me, and I was like, yeah, I'm fine now. And they're like, oh yeah, it was that building. It was that room. The room where he was getting ready to leave the Earth plane. One of the most intense ghostly experiences I've ever had. And this was not ghostly, but I wanted to bring it up because it was driving me insane. Our tour guide kept getting the dates and information wrong throughout the whole tour. And my other members of the tour kept raising their hand and calling him out on it. Not very often, but I feel like it should have been more than it was because he just kept getting everything wrong. When we went into the museum part that has all of Lisa Marie's old baby stuff in it, as well as Elvis's family tree and a lot of his weapons, he got so much wrong. There were plaques right there that had the years, dates, days and times on them, and he'd be looking at them and he was still getting the information wrong. One of them, I can't remember exactly what he said because this happened years ago, but he was looking at a photo, the photo of Lisa Marie with her little mushroom dress, dad's in the blue suit, mom's in a purplish outfit. My tour guide claimed that that photo was taken this year and that Lisa Marie was about 3 years old in this photo. However, Lisa Marie was born this year. So I raised my hand and asked, Lisa Marie was born this year, right? He says, yes. And you said she's 3 in this photo, right? Yes. Then how could this photo have been taken the year before she was born? And he was like, oh, well, I just misspoke. I got it wrong. Sorry. Because I gave him a little attitude with my correction and everybody else had tried to be nice about it, everybody in my tour group were like, ooh. And I couldn't keep my mouth shut after that. I was correcting that man left and right. It just kept happening again and again and again and again. And it was exhausting. I was like, I should be a tour guide at this point. I have everything absolutely memorized because I'm obsessed and a little crazy. Maybe more than a little. So this tour guide not being able to speak up, we can't hear him, and then what little we can hear of him, the information is wrong. It was driving me bananas, and I don't know how this man still had a job after that day. Because we went into Elvis's garage, or what used to be the garage. Now it's an outdoor garage, but the indoor space that used to be the garage is set up for viewing a intro movie, short film type of situation for those who are doing the audio guided tour instead of the VIP tour. We were told we should get to watch this movie as well because we are paying the money for VIP. So we all got to sit down and watch the short film. Once the short film is over, I turn around and my whole tour group is gone. I have bad eyesight, I'm very short, I sat in the very front row so I could see and hear and watch the whole movie. The rest of my tour group mostly stood along the back wall because it was pretty crowded in there already. So somehow they left without me, and I don't know why this happens constantly, but for some reason I have been abandoned on school field trips multiple times. And just like with this tour guide, the teachers are supposed to count the kids and do roll call before they leave. So why the heck did I get left behind? in this situation and multiple times throughout the whole time I was in school. With not seeing any of my tour group people in that room or my guide, and he was a really tall man, so he would have been easy enough to spot, I stepped out into the seated area where they had a whole bunch of fans going because it was hot outside. I think it was 92, I want to say. It was summer in Memphis. But it didn't seem that hot to me because I grew up in Texas. 100 degrees is a bit warm. So I checked up with one of the employees. I said, "Excuse me, I think my tour group left without me." And she said, "Oh, really? Who was your tour guide?" I told her his name. She started thinking about it, and she's like, "You guys should be on the other side of the property by now." And I'm going, "Oh, great." They completely abandoned me on the opposite end of the property. So this really sweet girl started making calls on her walkie to figure out where my tour group was. And the thing was, my tour guide was not answering his walkie. So all they could do was guess at where they were. But based on the schedule, they should have been in a building where all of the VIP items are kept. You know, the whole reason I paid extra money to be able to go do this thing. So I hung out with this very sweet girl over by all the fans out in the heat until they got me a personal bus to take just me to the other side of the property. And while I was chatting with this girl, she actually asked me out. And I went, "Oh, wait, how old are you?" She said she was 17. And I was like, "Ha! I'm 24, sweetheart." And she went, "Oh, damn, you look young." I was like, I know. And then I also apologized. I wouldn't be going out with her anyway because I'm not staying in Memphis very long and I already have all of my stuff planned and scheduled. And she asked if we could still hang out as friends. And I was like, "No, you just asked me out. I'm pretty sure you'd try to turn it into a date, and you're very cute and very sweet. I know we were getting along really well just now, but you're not technically legal for me, and I don't want to get in trouble." And still keep continuing to try to ask me out, because she tried multiple times that first day, and then I came back the next day, and she still tried to ask me out again. I was like, what? I was a little bit flattered, but I was not taking the offer. I did not want to get in any legal trouble. And for those who haven't been to Memphis, Memphis is largely a Black community. I live in Colorado, especially in my area, where it's largely a white community. So I felt like I was extremely outnumbered.
Memphis supposedly is full of crime, but I was not worried about my safety because even after what I experienced in Memphis, I can still say I've experienced worse in Denver and Boulder. Although I did have 2 different Ubers playing radio shows preaching about how white people don't deserve to live. That made me uncomfy, and then a group of 12 guys chased me out of Beale Street. These guys and multiple other groups of people while I was there would yell at me that I needed to get my little white ass out of town. I started feeling unwelcome, even though I didn't think I was doing anything wrong because I was just walking through or riding public transit. But there were those who seemed to have massive issues with my skin color. Although those are stories for another video, so I'll use this to say, hate is still bullying no matter your skin color. It is still defined as racism. It was nice to find that this girl was nothing like them, did not care about our difference in skin color, she was very sweet, and definitely helpful in finding my tour group. And I can say this for most of the Graceland staff that I interacted with as well. Which is why I greatly appreciate Elvis's view on this topic, where you judged the person by their personality and actions rather than their skin color.
So it felt kind of out of place for me that she was asking me out, although she might have also been asking me out because I was different, and also because she and I were getting along really well because we're both massive nerds. And she was telling me about how most of the people she knows in this area are not anime fans, they're not Star Trek fans, or any of the other big name fandoms that everybody who goes to like Comic-Con absolutely love. And she's within that community of loving all the nerdy stuff. So while I was interested and would have loved to spend more time with her, I didn't want to push it. Finally, my personal bus showed up to drive me over to the opposite end of the property. I had offered to walk myself over there because I knew which building I was going to once they explained it to me. But since it was so hot, they're like, no, you need AC, you're getting in a bus. So I loved how the rest of the employees handled the situation, even though my own tour guide was terrible at his job. We get to the building that has the VIP stuff in it. I walk in, and all of my tour group goes, ooh. And my tour guide turns around and goes, oh my god, I thought you left. I thought you didn't want to be with us anymore. I thought you were gone. And I was like, no, you left me in the garage to watch that movie. And then you were just gone. And he goes, oh, well, just go ahead and take a seat then. I talked to some of the people in my group, and they explained that he had said he thought I went to the bathroom. And, was gone for the bathroom for over an hour. Well, almost an hour, technically. But still, I just abandoned my group to go to the bathroom for the whole time that they're in the VIP building, which I paid a lot of money for. So I got to do the VIP stuff. I got to hold EP's boot from the 68 comeback. Technically on display, they say the boots that are in the glass case near the leather suit are the actual boots. But then they said the boot that I got to hold in the VIP section were also the actual boots. Based upon my experience and understanding of it, I believe the boots I held were the real ones, and the boots in the case are replicas, because looking at the boots in the case, they definitely do not have enough creases in them for them to have been worn by Elvis, at least not very much. He might have gotten replicas made and worn them a couple of times and got creases in them, but he moved around so much and tapped his feet so much that you're going to get a lot of creases in that leather. Real leather. Look through all the VIP items. I personally, especially after experiencing what I experienced with my tour guide, do not feel that the VIP is worth it. Pay for the audio guided tour, please. You'll be saving yourself some money and still getting pretty much the same experience, aside from the few items that are in the VIP section that you would get to take pictures of. Our tour guide also just spent most of the tour saying very rude things about Elvis and acting like he was an evil person, which he wasn't. He was just a very mentally ill person, and I'm sure plenty of us have been there, dealing with addiction, depression, autism, ADHD, so on and so forth, all of his medical issues on top of that. It's not always a fun life to live, and sometimes you're gonna lose your mind a little bit here and there. Is that behavior okay? No. But is it understandable? Yes. Although our tour guide was making jabs, like saying that EP was a terrible swimmer, and claiming that he was a bad shot, even though he had all of these weapons and a range at his house. Oh, I just saw the pictures for the racquetball. Oh, there's a pinball machine in there, which I love. I wanted to play on it. Oh, I'm shaking. Going through these pictures just make my legs shake. Alright, we are finally to the end of the tour for the first day. We got to go to the gardens where the tombstones are. Got to see Benjamin and Lisa Marie's. And as we're walking around these tombstones, people are just sobbing. I was like, oh, well, when you need to cry, I guess, it's as good as time as any. But I wasn't really feeling the need to bawl my eyes out. I was still trying to read the property, because I was seeing ghost horses running around the property, cows, and then a number of people that weren't looking quite the same as everybody else. All of the images of ghosts that were a little bit hazy and wearing clothing that didn't quite fit modern era. while I'm trying to pinpoint which of these people are misty and which are more physical, I notice a woman really struggling to make it up the hill that's in between the front yard and the backyard. The hill really isn't that bad unless you have health problems or you struggle with walking. But this lady, who was wearing a purple dress, had black floral print on it, she was a bit overweight and also seemed like she had other health problems going on, so she was really struggling with that movement of going almost straight up for a few feet and then coming to the top of the hill. So I started making my way up the hill to help her the rest of the way, especially down. As I'm making my way up the hill, she leaned against a tree at the top of the hill and went, whew. And then she noticed me. She looked directly at me and smiled and waved. So I smiled and waved back. I looked down at the hill to make sure I'm not losing my footing because there are holes in this yard and it's kind of lumpy. And when I look back up, I should have been right in front of the woman leaning against the tree. However, the woman was not leaning against the tree anymore. The tree was there. The woman was gone. I looked around the general area thinking maybe she went around the tree the other side, going, I don't really need her help. She was sweet and waving at me, but I don't need that. She was nowhere to be found. She was not on the property anymore. After I got back to my Airbnb that evening, I realized why she looked a little familiar. That was Gladys. And it was really close to the end of her life because she struggled to make her way around the property. She was pretty overweight, and all of her other health problems on top of that made it very difficult for her to get around towards the last couple of years of her life. So I thought it was really cool that I didn't necessarily see a residual of her because she interacted with me. I saw Gladys. Walking around the tombstones, you see Minnie May and Elvis himself, Vernon's tombstone, but there's also the stones for Gladys and Jessie. I felt really drawn to that corner of the cemetery, but then our tour guide pulled us away from that very quickly because everybody was being hysterical around EP's tombstone. It's not him there anymore. That is a corpse. I have been seeing his energy freaking all over the place. He's not there in that one little square anymore. That might be where his vessel was buried, but his energy is absolutely everywhere else. And if you hear other ghost stories about EP, his energy is often mostly seen in Vegas. Dude's not hanging out on this little block of cement, I promise. At least not consistently. Then we passed by that famous fence, the one that I saw in Lilo and Stitch and thought, I have to go there. Then we went to the car and vehicle museum. From there I'm going to cut off this story because it's not very ghostly and we'll keep going with the ghosts. But because the tour guide forgot me that day, I got a free ticket for another day within the next couple of weeks to come to the museum again. So did everybody else in my tour group. So I came back the very next day to do the audio guided tour voiced by Uncle Jesse from Full House, John Stamos. When I got into the line to go back to the house from the museum and the ticket stand, these ladies tried to argue with me and tell me that I was not allowed to use my free ticket because I was already there yesterday. And I'm like, but I have a free ticket. I was given a free ticket. And I actually had a handwritten note from my tour guide apologizing for leaving me behind. So I handed them that. They read it and were like, oh my god, the new guy forgot this kid. We're gonna kill him. And I saw my tour guide guiding another tour right as I entered the ticket building. I was like, how the heck does this man still have a job? Well, I got to watch that short film again because that's technically supposed to be your intro before you go into the building. And I got the John Stamos audio guided tour. Amazing. More so worth the money than that VIP thing I did. Please let me know in the comments if you did VIP and it actually had a decent tour guide. But from what I've heard from other people thus far, VIP is just not really worth it. So, with me getting to be by myself and take as much time as I want to in the house, I most definitely did. I hung out near the living room for quite a while, waiting for Old MacDonald to start up again. It was faint. I feel like it's them celebrating together in their afterlife. So it's not so much that it's actually happening there, they're just projecting themselves there because that's where they see themselves. What I did get, though, was I saw that widow again, and she's turning on the candles, and you can see the wood floors underneath her as she walks past through the carpeted areas. And she was just very upset that there were all these people in her house. And people walking past kept putting out her candles, so she had to keep lighting them back on. Poor lady was very frustrated. I tried to communicate with her, but she was not hearing me. I think she's been locked into that state for too long to be able to communicate with me properly. I'd have to spend a lot more time in that house without so many people being there to be able to get her attention. Then I stood in the spot where I had started getting the red carpet visions and the chest pain that wasn't actually my own, except it was just the same images over and over and over again, and the same sensations of crawling on this red carpet, dragging yourself along, chest hurting, stomach hurting, heart feeling like it's trying to explode, difficulty breathing, vomiting on that carpet, trying to call for help, but your voice just isn't working. And again, it's horrible, but I was hoping to get more because I really feel like those are the visions from him just before his last moments. Since I wasn't getting anything new, I moved on to the actual staircase itself instead of next to it. And I kept seeing mists walk through the staircase and walk around. It wasn't just the Presley family and their friends that were misting through, but even just people who had owned the house just before EP and families before that. So I put my hand on that banister, hoping I wouldn't get in trouble with the staff. I didn't see any staff around, so fingers crossed. Put my hand on the banister. You're not allowed to go upstairs. If anybody knows, you're not allowed to go upstairs. And I so desperately wanted to get a read on that bedroom because something was so loud from that room. So I put my hand on that banister and was like, come on, EP, give me something. I see the bedroom door open, shut. There is a man-sized mist form, kind of bluish, at the top of the stairs at the end of that railing. He walks down the length of the landing and properly materializes at the top of the stairs. And it is EP. He is in a blue, violet-ish tracksuit. Sunglasses on, bunch of gold chains, all of his jewelry on his fingers and up and down his arms. Dude is jingling like he's ready for Christmas. And at the top of the stairs, he's standing at that corner before you turn to actually go down the stairs. And he takes his sunglasses and bops them down a little bit and looks at everybody coming through the doorway and goes, ah. And I smiled up at him and went, you're about tired of this BS, aren't you, man? He didn't respond because it was a residual energy that I was seeing and not actually his ghost in the way that people would think. This was an imprint. It was like a handprint on the wall saying there was somebody who had been there. You can see that a human was there, but they're not there anymore. And he started coming down the stairs, grumbling to himself about how tired he was. And as his hand reached the bottom of that banister, I felt his hand brush against mine. I felt the warmth of his hand. His hands were kind of sweaty. I could feel like the fleshiness. It was a weird sensation because I have never gotten residual energy that was that strong. But so many people put their energy into this building, are absolutely obsessed with EP himself. So even the residual hauntings can have their own magnitude and density to them, which is just insane to me. Walk through the dining room, same kind of energy as last time. Walk through the kitchen, same stuff. We get to where the recording studio used to be, and there's this mom with her boy who has Down syndrome. He's probably 13, I want to say. And that boy kept insisting and trying to get over that velvet rope and go into the room for some reason. And it was more of, he just wanted to break the rules. He kept insisting, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I want to do it just because I want to. And finally his mom said, first she just kept telling him, no, you're not going to. No, don't do it. No, don't go that way. You're not allowed to go that way. Finally, she said, no, you can't do that. If you do, you'll get in trouble with the cops and they'll take you away from me and you won't ever see me again. And the guy went, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. And he was very annoying throughout the rest of the time that I was in that building. He kept trying to break things, knock things over, move things around, go across the velvet ropes. I so wish they would kick that couple out of there, because I was very afraid he was going to actually properly break something. He was knocking stuff over, but luckily nothing broke as far as I know. And it would have been fine if he was behaving himself, but he was not. Went through the mirrored stairway, had the same kind of energy with the records and the TVs, and in the pool table room. Went to the jungle room and was finally able to stand there and try to get a read on it. Sadly, I still didn't get much. There was too much going on in the house, and there's so much going on in that room that all I could get was a memory of one of the guys from the Memphis Mafia smoking this massive cigar in that room, and EP jumping up and going, don't smoke that in my house! Not on this carpet! Take it outside! Except that's all I was getting, and that scene kept playing on loop, and I was like, okay, I guess that's all I'm getting from this room. And while I was in that room, you can lean on this kind of archway, windowway situation, lean on the wooden windowsill, and look into the room. Well, I was leaning on that windowsill for a good long while. I think I was probably there for like 20 minutes. And this younger couple, I want to say they were like in their mid-20s, looked at me and went, oh, I think I know what you're doing. And I pulled myself out of my read and looked at them and I was like, what? What am I doing? And the husband said, you can see ghosts, can't you? I was like, yeah, I can. And the wife's like, that's so cool. And they're like, oh, I wish I could do that. That's so cool. And they left. Then, good, right? Memory card good? Yeah, memory card's good. Are you just You're overheating. Okay. Quit being a baby. We're almost done.
This was the room where ABC filmed and kept having technical difficulties with lights and cameras dying on them, as well as Austin Butler nearly jumping out of his skin every single time there was a weird knock or creak around the house. Lisa Marie was perfectly comfortable with it because she grew up with it. She knew this house was haunted. In an interview, Austin Butler himself mentioned how he had chest pains and breathing difficulty when he attempted to leave Graceland after staying late, hoping to have some sort of interaction or connection with EP.
Going outside of the house and past the outdoor garage, I start hearing this little girl singing. Old MacDonald had a farm. I turn around and there's actually a couple of parents with about a 4-year-old daughter, and she's bouncing around singing Old MacDonald, and her mom said, sweetheart, when did you hear that song? When did that pop into your head? And the little girl says, the guy was singing it. And Dad goes, what guy? The little girl says, the guy at the white piano. He was singing Old MacDonald, and he was being very silly. Made me feel better. Those couple of girls saw the piano keys move when I did, and then that little 4-year-old actually heard him singing like I did. Thank you for not letting me be alone in that. I went walking through everything else, didn't experience a whole lot of anything different, And then I readied myself for going into the racquetball court. I managed to feel everything vaguely without it hitting me like a brick wall. And so I still had to get out of there pretty quickly because it was intense. It was still squashing me. Then I could finally go back to those tombstones that I was very drawn to. Ooh, my voice is going again. I sat on the step, kind of in between Jesse's and Gladys's stones, because I just felt an energy between the two of them somehow. I felt especially connected to Jesse's. And this woman who looked like a hippie, but was actually a person, I think, came up to me. This woman was wearing very long, flowing, and colorful patchwork kind of fabric, headscarf, olive green vest with wooden buttons, a very long skirt, bedazzled sparkles all over it. And she went, "Huh, I think I know what you're doing." I asked her, "What?" And she said, "You can feel them. You can actually read them, feel them." And I go, "Yeah, I can." And she goes, "Damn, I wish I could do that. That's so cool." And she stood there just watching me, and I ignored her and kept doing my read on the tombstone area and kept doing my read on the cemetery when she went, "Oh my god, he's right beside you." And I grinned and went, "Yeah, I know he is." And she's like, "No, you don't get it. He is right beside you." I said, "You mean EP?" "Yeah, I know he is." And her jaw is just on the floor because I am not fazed by this at all. Knowing that I am going to sound absolutely insane saying this, I said previously that one of my spirit guides is heavily connected to Elvis. To my understanding, and from what other psychics, mediums, and people with spiritual energies have been able to read on this, is that when people pass, their souls fragment and pieces of them are shared throughout the community. It is very likely that I have a fragment of his soul following me around, because I have had this since I was 3, seeing a man who looks just like him. And I do know how crazy it sounds to those who are not within the spiritual community. Even those in the community might still think it sounds insane. But the few people who have worked with me on this concept, they believe it wholeheartedly, even if they didn't when I first talked to them about it. After experiencing and seeing a number of the things that they have around me, they get it. And my mom has absolutely no question about it, because she has felt that energy around me ever since I was little. She couldn't actually place who it was, but she had a feeling I had a protector. I won't go into a lot of detail on that because I actually would like to write a book on it, kind of explaining past lives and how I understand they work through what my spirit guides have told me and what I've learned through research and my own personal experiences. And now I have goosebumps again. I know it is beyond crazy to share something like this on the internet, but I'm hoping that other people who have had similar experiences will find me, find this, and be able to connect with it, realizing that they're not as crazy as they think they are, because these paranormal experiences are not as uncommon as the general public wants you to believe. With that very hippie-looking woman, she's still following me around towards the end of my second visit there, and just gawking at the fact that she can see his ghost and he is attached to me. Now, this isn't Elvis's ghost in the way that a lot of people would think. Like, they probably would think more Elvis's ghost is what I saw with the residual haunting coming down the stairs. But again, for me, it's a fragment of him that hangs out with me. It's not his entirety, because he shares himself with lots of people. Priscilla says she still gets ghostly interactions with him, constantly knocking things off the wall or messing with various items on tables. So it's not all of him, it's just enough of him to be with me. And this lady in the colorful fabrics goes, "Oh, wait. "You're leaving?" I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna take the next bus back to the museum buildings over there." And she goes, "Oh my god, and he's just gonna come with you?" "Yeah, he's always with me. That's why I had to come here. Because he was telling me I should. And he was telling me I should share my story. I waited a couple of years now to share it because I kept feeling like I'm crazy. And I know I am, to a certain degree. But speaking to my therapist on this, she has seen him through our video chats as well. She has seen him twice, and he's popped up in the background of my videos with her during our appointments. So I know that I am not completely losing it when I have had a number of people who aren't super connected to me also be able to see him. Because I have had people on the bus and at the bus stop tell me that they think I'm being followed, or my older brother seems like he's quite a bit older than me. Whatever variation they go with, where they can see this dude who's about 6 feet tall, blue eyes, black hair. And the woman with the colorful scarves could not get over the fact that part of him was with me. And she went, "Oh, wait, Marilyn Monroe." And I smiled at her. I was like, yeah, she hangs out a little bit too. I am not nearly as connected to her. I feel like she's more friendship energy, where she's popping in and out. EP is always hanging out. Marilyn is just chilling, does her own thing, visits for a little bit, and is gone again. So I think it was more of a friendship with her rather than actually getting a proper fragment of her. And that woman with the colorful scarves stared with her jaw on the ground as I got on the bus and rode back to the museum. And later I heard that she had to be forcefully taken off the property because she started harassing everybody else on the property about if they had ghosts following them around. So again, there is a certain level of crazy that does go into this, which I'm very aware of. But I am living in a body that allows me to do this stuff, and I try to be a lot more careful about who and how and when I talk about it with. But I also feel like it's important to share, so hopefully the right people find this. When I went back to the museum, I saw a little ghost boy through the window at the museum, and you'll be able to hear that story in the video in the cards above, because I've already told that story. I will continue to pick out sections of my Memphis trip to tell stories, but these are my ghostly interactions from Graceland. If you've had similar interactions on that property, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. If you feel the need to leave hate comments, please be aware that giving my videos stats will still push my video out to more people and make it a lot more popular. I greatly appreciate you sitting through this whole story with me. I am aware it is a very long story. My camera finally started to overheat again. I had to put it in the fridge for a bit. But let me give my camera a nice long nap after this, and thank you ever so much for those subs, comms, thumbs, and a ding. They're the best way to support me for free. I continue to do ghostly, nerdy, spooky, and fun things. I'm just being me over here. Most commonly, I cosplay on this channel, so please subscribe if you want to hang out with an absolute ghostly nerd. And welcome to the madness. I should have my pictures with me, just in case I'm missing something. Yeah, Tupelo. Tupelo! And the reason that he would have been knee-deep is because the ground has piled up over time. So that farmer is at the level of where he would have been if he was still farming back in the day. I need to put a little guy on top of my camera so that I stop looking at the viewfinder. A little guy on top of the camera. The ground that has layered up over time has surpassed where he's at. Whoa, a little guy. Oh no, He always lands standing up too. I feel like that fan's gonna be too annoying. I gotta check the recording. Can you hear me talking well enough over the fan? The fan would be nice to have on because I want that airflow. But I don't know if it's too loud. Yep, fan was too loud for my liking when I got on my computer and double checked. So I'm just gonna have to go with being hot. Love that for me. I need that open just a little bit so we have airflow. And I do not die from heat stroke. Oh my god, my little guy. Stay. We don't need a close-up on that. Oh my, where are we zoomed in? Back it up. It's so windy outside. I don't know if the camera's picking that up. It's windy outside. Let me check on my dog.